Level up screens. They have quite a lot to convey to the player. Information, limitations, choice, consequences. It can be quite a lot to wrap your head around. Some screens feel cumbersome and unwieldy, others feel too simple. The balance is a tricky and delicate one to maintain. Good visual design can help, like using the right colours and headings, but the greatest tool in your belt is in how you divide the information. And when I say divide the information, this probably comes to mind. Sorting all the powers and abilities into different sections, tabs or pages. And while this can be useful, it too can often lead to confusion, like in Far Cry 3 for instance, where the powers are separated between 3 tabs named Spider, Shark and Heron. But even when they're not given stupid names, these screens can feel a little chaotic. I too often feel like I have to reacquaint myself with all the abilities in all the sections every time I just want to level up. Games often ask us to return to these sorts of screens dozens of times over. It's in the best interest for all styles of play to make this screen as manageable and legible as possible. This can be accomplished by keeping 2 simple guidelines in mind. Number 1, find out what the player really wants to know, and then number 2, make that information easy to find. Some of these screens partially accomplish this, but in rather broad, sometimes nebulous strokes. To see one of the better examples of designing by division, we need to look at the Dragon Age series, specifically Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition. This is the Mage's level up screen. The powers are neatly tucked into each segment. There's even some nice colour coordination going on. At first glance, this may seem like any other skill tree, but take a closer look. Notice how the powers are not only separated into different tabs, but also into different shapes: squares, circles, and hexagons. Squares represent active abilities like Winter's Grasp or Fireball, spells that you use in battles, spells which line up along your taskbar and must be activated by the player. The circle represents passive abilities, abilities that you don't need to activate but work under the hood, making your player stronger, faster, or more resilient to damage. And finally, the hexagon, which acts as something of a cross between the 2 previous shapes. It represents special buffs that make you stronger or provides armour, but needs to be activated by the player manually. When I said find out what the player wants to know, this is the sort of thing I was talking about. I don't mean to badmouth the previous examples too much, they're definitely of use. It's just that sort of division acts more like an index, whereas this example is far more tied to the actual gameplay. It's far more relevant to the player's needs. These abilities are in large part how you interact with the world, and they're presented in such a deceptively simple way that many may barely notice the division at all. Compare this screen to the one found in, say, Ori and the Blind Forest, which visually speaking is pretty enough, and there's even some decent division going on, but all the abilities are represented by these tiny drawings that barely take up more than a few centimeters on your PC screen, and don't do enough to differentiate themselves. They may as well be blank for all the good they do. While I never memorised each and every facet of these skill trees, I never really had to. Just by glancing at this screen, I immediately know how these powers work, at least roughly. You can quickly pop in, find out what you need to know, make your decision, then pop back out again, whilst still knowing what impact your choice just had on the gameplay. To fully understand why this screen works so well, it helps to look at other games that maybe could have been improved by this sort of implementation. Look at this screen from Shadow of Mordor for example. I'll be honest, it wasn't until I replayed this game again for this video that I noticed that there is a line of division down here that separates the skills of the Human Ranger and the more magical abilities of the Wraith, which at first blush seems like the ideal way to divide these powers. But truthfully, this distinction doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, I know there are story and character reasons as to why it does, but from a gameplay perspective though, there's very little reason to mentally separate these skill sets as they seem to work in perfect unison. Besides, the line of division is so faint and barely registers that doesn't really matter anyway. Every time I leveled up, all I saw were a bunch of identical squares that I have to decipher. Deus Ex Human Revolution has some more division going on, but I can't say it's much better as, for some reason, the abilities are divided by body part. I feel like the game is grasping for some logic here, but it just fails me. The ability to shoot rockets is found in the torso. Taking down multiple enemies at once isn't found in the arms section, but rather the back section, and the ability to fall from a great height isn't in legs, but is also found in the back. Some of these placements may be up for debate, but the point is that this approach doesn't feel very intuitive. Obviously, Eidos Montreal disagreed as they stuck with this approach for the sequel, but maybe it would have been better to divide the abilities not by body type, but rather by gameplay style, like stealth, action, hacking, or even exploration. These screens would do better by thinking less like spreadsheets and indexes, and considering more the player's approach to playing the game. Leveling up is, in theory, meant to fill the player with joy and empowerment, but I increasingly find myself putting off the act of leveling up because oftentimes it can feel like a chore. Regardless of what sort of player you are and what your approach to leveling up is, everybody can still benefit from making the level up screen as breezy and legible as possible. Remember, the best level up screens cater to how the player plays. Stealthy and attacking, defensive, light, and offensive, dark, or active and passive. Find out what the player wants to know, then make that information easy to find. Hey folks, first of all I'd like to thank all the patrons who have stuck with me during my 6-month hiatus. I haven't been charging them lately, but their continued support is so appreciative. I usually have a specific tier for patron shoutouts, but just this once I'd like to thank each and every single one of them, so thank you very much. Now the main thing I wanted to announce here is that I'm planning on doing another 24-hour charity stream on this channel on the 15th of July. That date may be subject to late change, so I'll try and keep you up to date. Me and my friends did this last year and it was a lot of fun, and I'm eager to do it again. All proceeds will be going to the Great Ormond Street Hospital, which provides care for children and their families. You could wait for the stream to start, or you can hit the link below and donate right now if you're keen. Any donation, large or small, would be greatly appreciated. Thanks everyone, here's hoping I can get the next video out a lot sooner than this one. Take care.
Do that again. See if you get you a second. Do it like lots. Do it a lot in a row. Keep doing it. I take it back what I said about this guy being a damn good guy.
There's that thing again.
I don't think he is the best guy.